Okay, so here's kind of, this will be a quick call. I know we're getting started late. I had to drop my daughter off at her little theater camp she goes to once a week. But this is, so if you didn't show up on the first call, what this is going to be, this is not a sit back and relax and watch somebody talk to us about how to invite mastermind. That's not what we're here for. This is very much a leadership style mastermind group where we are going to present and talk about situations and problems that we may not know the answer to at this time, but we are committed to finding answers and working with those who are willing to work and getting people to act. As you guys know, the only way you can grow your business is if you help people achieve their goals and as they stay around, and if you help them act, all those kind of things. It's not so much what you do, it's how you influence others. And I talk to all of you all the time, and you guys have heard me say more than once that the most important conversations you can have with anybody at any time during any point in their coach or customer lifetime are the initial first few conversations. Reason being is because that's where you get to lay out everything. You get to understand where they're coming from. They understand where you're coming from. And it's where expectations are established. I think you guys have been around long enough to where you have had people have extremely accurate expectations of what coach life looks like and extremely inaccurate expectations of what coach life looks like. And the ones who stick around are the ones whose expectations are right where they should be, not above nor below. The people who decide to quit or not do as well as they should are the people who have false expectations of what coach life looks like, and because it doesn't meet expectations, they quit. So here, I hope you guys have something to write with. I'm going to have you get a piece of paper out, blank piece of paper, and a pen, marker, crayon, in my case, kids everywhere. Yeah, that works, great. Okay, and then I want you, I'm gonna see if I can do this. By the way, this is something I've never done before, and so we're going to get through this together. Okay, if you could, oh, I'll wait for Kate. We can't start without Kate. We're going to learn some leadership principles and talk about it here. Okay, here we go. So if you could, on the bottom corner of the page, draw a big old circle. Big dot. And underneath it, write you. And then, let's see if I can do this without. I want you to draw a 45-degree angle going up. So the dot, the line, the arrow at the top, that's so far so good. And underneath it, write expectation. So pretty much it looks something, this little squiggly line was my daughter. We're going to ignore that one. That's what it should look like. As you know, when we sign somebody up, we have expectations for what we think they should be doing, whether they are a coach or whether they are a customer. And what we're going to do is I want you to, above the line, on the top part, write down things, expectations of a coach or customer that fall above the line. Behaviors, habits, attitudes, whatever. Things that fall above the expectation line.
So like something that is more than what we expect from them.
Let's say expected and above. I'll give you 45 seconds to write some of the behaviors, attitudes, of things that they do that fall on the expected line or above it. And when you're done with that, I'm going to have you guys do the exact same thing with things that fall below the expectation line. Here's them. Here's what you expect them to do. What are the things that they do when they fall below the expectation line? Okay. So you can continue writing, but I want to have a few people tell me just one or two things above that you wrote and one or two things below the expectation line that you wrote. I don't know if we have time for everybody, but let's just go through a few. Anybody want to start us off with what you put above and below?
I can go first. So above, I put post on social media and show up for team calls, hit Success Club 5. Below the expectation line, fall off the wagon, not be a product of the product, whine and complain instead of doing.
I love the whine part. Boy, you've all been there before.
I put the same thing, whine and complain.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Let's do one more. Anybody else have a different one that they want to add to it?
I put down ask in the top, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and then also find the answers. I expect people to not want me to hold their hand, but to ask leading questions, ask what they need to know, but also be aware of where to go to get those answers. And then, in the below, I wrote whine and complain, and I wrote quit after a week. I'm not making millions of dollars in a week, or I'm not helping everybody in the world in a week, therefore I'm going to quit.
Excellent. Okay, so I think you had the other two. We'll get to you eventually with some other answers, but that's perfect. That's exactly what I think. All of us have the same things that fall above the line and fall below the line. Let me tell you something. Maybe an interesting, and I've never done this, nor have I had a coach do this yet. But I would find it very interesting if you did this with a coach. First time, sign up. Sit down with them, get on a Zoom. If they're local, meet up, and have them do the exact same thing. And without you prompting them or persuading them one way or the other, have them write what they think expectations are for them to grow, and maybe some things that could potentially have them fall off the expectation line. I would think this would be a fascinating activity because this gives you an insight into what the heck is going on in their mind. Because as I just mentioned, everybody has different expectations. And if you expect one level and they expect a different level, that's called miscommunication. And in any relationship that you have, miscommunication leads to not good things. Might as well come out and say, okay, let's talk about what this line looks like for both of us. Now, obviously, never in the history of mankind will this line ever be straight. It'll be all over the place, but it should trend upwards. And it's always good to do gut check calls where you every now and then maybe pull this out, take a copy of it and say, here's where you were. Tell me where you think you are along this line. And guys, this line, there's no time is irrelevant. You cannot put a time frame you can't attach time to this line. But you can say, okay, are you better? Are you above where you were from day one or when we made this graphic? And if so, how come? How come you're above it? How come you're above where you were before? Or if you've fallen off, and this is a harder call to have, maybe if they are doing some of the things that fall below, maybe it's good time to pull out this list and say, hey, remember when you did this with me? let's kind of talk about what's happening. And maybe we need to redefine expectations because reality is taking a role here. And it's okay that we redefine expectations, but let's keep you on the path rather than fall off the path. You guys have heard me say this before, maybe. If not, maybe you've read my Facebook post on this. But I relate a lot of what you do to being a doctor. Let's pretend you have a sinus infection and you go see the doctor. You sit down, the doctor comes in, says, "Hi, here's your prescription." And you're like, this prescription is for Xanax. Xanax has nothing to do with sinus infections. But that doesn't make any sense. The doctor doesn't come in and say, "Here you go. Here's what you're supposed to do. Here's your prescription." The doctor comes in and says, "Hi, how are you? What's going on? What hurts? Point to what hurts. Tell me the symptoms you're having." He or she starts asking questions to better understand what's going on. Too many times, coaches come in and somebody signs up and they say, "Awesome, thank you so much for signing up. Here's your prescription. Here's what you're supposed to do." When I would think it would be better to sit down and start asking questions so that you can give the correct prescription for that individual. It's different for every person. I would be very interested to know how many different prescriptions a doctor writes every single day. They do. Everybody comes in with different whatever. They give a prescription based on what they've learned about that individual. They don't give the same prescription to every single person hoping that it helps. The same thing needs to happen with us and coaches. When it comes to working with coaches, talk to them, define expectations, ask questions, and then give the correct prescription so that they can say, "I got it." Now, today, what we're going to do is talk about, this is a two-part series, just so you know. This graphic is a two-part series. We're going to do this today and the next time. Today, we're going to start with below. I figured we're going to start with the people who fall below the line, and then next time we'll talk about people who fall above the line. When it comes to people who fall below the line, we're going to talk about kind of what to do and how to help them. This book I'm reading, I read, talks about how you can define pretty much everything that falls below the line. You can kind of categorize them into two groups. The first group of people, and I do want you to write this down, is they need counsel. And the second one is they need to be provided. So counsel and provide are the two categories. And I'm going to first talk about counsel. Now, counsel is the difference between if they need to be counseled or if they need to be provided. And I'll explain what both mean. Comes in the attitude of the individual. The first one we're going to be talking about is counsel. Counsel is when they have everything they need to be successful, but their attitude isn't there. Let me give you just a quick little snippet into what we say here. So going back to the doctor, here are some of the symptoms a person who needs to be counseled will show. Their performance is below expectation. Correctional feedback is required. I like that's kind of a disciplinary one. Advising is needed. I like that one. Performance or behavioral problems need to be solved. And a conflict resolution needs to take place. Your whiners could be kind of be categorized into here. They have everything they need to be successful, but they have an issue with some of the people on the team, or they're falling below expectations and they just don't want to get up in them anymore. They don't want to drink their shakes. They don't want to work out anymore. They don't want to invite. It's not a scare thing. Their attitude is off. It says, the counsel role is needed when the individual has all they need to perform and they are capable of performing, but for some reason they choose not to perform. You have to remember that they wanted to do this job or they wouldn't have applied. I love that. You have to, one of the best things you can do when talking to an individual who needs to be counseled is bringing them back to that point when they said yes, when they clicked purchase, or they say, yeah, I'll purchase the challenge pack. They saw themselves in a better position. They saw themselves in a better place, or else they wouldn't have purchased it. We need to go back to that reason. We need to remind them of and say, let's go back to what you expected when you first signed up. What was that expectation you had in your mind? And then start asking questions to where they can bring that out. And then we start talking about, so what's happening? What's going on here? Now, when it comes to the prescription for the counseling, there's a couple things that we can do to help them out. Number one is empathetic listening. Number two, defining expectations or redefining expectations if you've already defined it. And number three is sharing intentions. So empathetic listening and sharing intentions will give the leader a chance to hear what that coach has to say from their perspective without judgment or any consequences. This is where we kind of just have that listening ear. We do the empathetic listening, and then we help by asking questions and maybe pulling this out. We help define and or redefine expectations. Easier said than done, I get it. And I think you all have people who you work with who fall within this category of needing to be counseled. But they can come out of this. They can get back to the expectation line and or they can go above it as well. People who fall with right now who are currently in your below expectation line are not duds in any way. Now, I did this call yesterday, and then a person raised their hand and they said, so, how long should we work with a person before we decide it's too much, I can't work with them, and I need to move on? That's a great question because you ain't growing the business if you're counseling people all the time. The action needs to take place. But I do think, one person said, well, bless and release. How about we say bless and pause, where you kind of just say, we've talked, we've listened, we've defined expectations. It's not working. Let's just take a break from this. Let's have you get life back into order, and then we'll get back and see if we can do it again and redefine expectation. I don't want anybody to leave with a sour taste in their mouth when it comes to Beachbody. And their taste of Beachbody comes through you. So make sure that they have everything they need to be successful. And if through these counseling sessions, if they don't see improvement themselves, it's okay to say, you know what, it's not working at this time. Let's go ahead and pause. I'll check back with you in X amount of time so that we can see how things are going and if life situations are improving. It's a very good thing to do. Okay, any questions with this first category of counsel that you guys have? Okay, here's what I want you to do before you go to provide. I want you to think of at least one individual who you are working with who falls into this category and write their name down. Great. Okay, so that's the lowest of the low when it comes to the expectation line. The one just above that is the provide category. Now this one, like I said, their attitude is they want to be successful, but they don't have everything they need, or at least they feel they don't have everything they need to be successful. The individual who requires the provide role wants to do a good job and meet expectations, but they need something from the leader or the organization in order to meet their objectives. So let me just go back quickly back to the symptoms that a person will show if they fall within the provide category. Once again, performance is below expectations. That's an obvious one. Direction has been lost. They don't know what to do next. They don't have what they need to do next. New expectations need to be defined. And performance objectives need to be established, reestablished, or clarified. Okay, and then it says here below, the purpose of the provide role is to provide the individual with the things that are necessary for them to reach their goals. Too often, we look at substandard performance and blame the individual. The truth is, in many cases, the individual needs something from the leader or the organization, such as training, support, tools, skill building, guidance, direction, defined expectations, or clearer goals. When the individual receives the proper training, guidance, and resources, they will improve their performance until it meets or exceeds expectations. The individual wants to do a good job, but needs the leader to provide critical elements for their success. Okay, so this one's kind of a lot of people fall into this category. At least they think they fall into this category, and because especially if they're new, they're stranded. They're confused. They want to be successful. Yeah, I want to lose X amount of pounds, or I want to earn X amount of money, but I don't know how. And so they try on their own, and they fall below the expectation line. Hopefully you've done this with them before so that and they know that they fall below the expectation line. And the next time you get on a call with them, you talk about, okay, let's redefine expectations, or let's talk about some of the things you feel you need in order to be successful. And it could just be training. It could just be guidance. It could just be helping them understand social media and how to respond to people. Now, as far as a prescription goes, the first one is gathering information or asking questions. And the second and last one is defining expectations. You want to gather information so you'll understand what the individual needs in order to get back on track. And you also want to be very specific when defining expectations so there won't be any question about what path to take and what's needed for them to be successful. I found this absolutely fascinating. And next time, we're going to talk about the people who fall above the line and how to keep them above the line. So just as we did with the counsel category, in the provide category, this one may be a little bit more difficult. I want you to write at least one person's name who falls within this category. Hold on one second. Okay. So is there any questions with the provide category or the counsel category that we've talked about today? Okay. So here's what I want you guys to do. This is the homework assignment where I think we put words to action, we put action plans in place. What I want you guys to do is I want you to, the people that you wrote down, two things. Number one, I want you to go to our Facebook page, our group page, and I want you to talk about the situation that these people fall in and what your proposed plan is for each of these individuals. One for counsel, one for provide. I want you to go and say, here's kind of what's happening with this individual and here's my proposed plan. The second part of your homework assignment is next time we talk, we're going to start off our conversation with, so how did it go? 2 weeks have passed. What's the update? And if things have gone completely south, don't avoid the call. Show up and tell us that things went completely south, so that we want to talk about it. The only way we're going to grow is if we try stuff. And if we fail, but we can move forward. And I want you guys, we're going to take the first little bit of the next call in 2 weeks and say, here's the person, here's where they were at, and here's my action plan, here's what I've done since, and kind of here's where I'm at now. So, two-part, because I think we all can benefit from listening and understanding each other. So go to the page, kind of put it out there. We're not going to judge you. And then maybe update it throughout the 2 weeks. And then from next time, we're going to talk about what you guys did for these people who fell below the expectation line. Once again, not a bad idea to do this with a lot of people you work with. It's just, it helps everybody understand. It helps everybody open up or air out any laundry that is needed, and we can move from there. So, any questions on that? Okay, I talked way too much. Sorry. Sometimes I get excited about these type of things. So, we're going to meet 2 weeks from now in regards to this, and we'll see you then. And then make sure you guys post on the page. But thanks for jumping on, and we'll catch you later. Thanks, guys.